War is happening, or threatening to happen. People are suffering, and you're at brunch. You're laughing at a meme, you're enjoying your coffee, you're planning your weekend, and you feel guilty. How can I be living my normal life when the world is burning? How can I enjoy anything when people are dying? How can I laugh when there's so much suffering? This is the paradox. The world is in crisis and your life is still happening. Both are true. And holding both without collapsing into guilt or dissociation is one of the hardest things you'll ever do. But it's necessary. Because you can't abandon your life to grieve the world, and you can't ignore the world to protect your life. You have to find a way to hold both, and that's what I'm teaching you today. I've struggled with this paradox my entire adult life. Every time there's a global crisis, I feel guilty for living normally, for enjoying things, for focusing on my small concerns when massive suffering exists. And I'd oscillate between two extremes, either consuming news constantly and being unable to enjoy anything, or avoiding news completely and feeling ashamed of my ignorance. Neither felt right, neither was sustainable, and I was exhausted from trying to resolve a paradox that can't be resolved. Because both are true, the world is suffering and my life continues, and I have to hold both. Then I learned from people who do this professionally, humanitarian workers, journalists, therapists who work with trauma, and they taught me, you don't resolve the paradox, you learn to live inside it. You acknowledge the suffering and you engage with your life. You grieve the world and you celebrate your existence. Not one or the other, both. And that's how you stay human, how you stay functional, how you contribute to healing instead of adding your suffering to the world's suffering. Here's what we're covering. First, why this paradox feels so impossible and what's actually happening when you feel guilty for living. Second, why trying to resolve the paradox by choosing one side destroys you. And third, the three practices that let you hold both grieving the world and living your life without guilt or numbness. Let's start with why this feels so impossible. You're experiencing what psychologists call survivor's guilt or geographic privilege. You're safe and others aren't. You have food and they're starving. You're sleeping peacefully and they're fleeing. And this inequality feels wrong, unjust, and you feel guilty. Like your safety is somehow taking from their suffering. Like enjoying your life dishonors their pain. And this guilt makes it hard to be present with your own life. Because every moment of joy feels like a betrayal of those who are suffering. And there's a deeper question underneath. What does my small life mean when the world is in crisis? Your concerns feel trivial. Your work feels pointless. Your relationships feel insignificant. Because how can any of that matter when war is threatening, when people are dying, when systems are collapsing, and you're stuck between abandoning your life to focus on global crisis or ignoring global crisis to protect your life? And neither option feels right. Your mind wants to resolve this. It wants clarity. Either the world crisis is all that matters, so I should stop living normally, or I can't do anything about the world crisis, so I should focus on my life. But reality doesn't offer that clarity, because both things are true simultaneously. The world is in crisis and your life matters. Your relationships matter, your work matters, your joy matters. And you have to hold both truths without letting one erase the other. Here's why trying to resolve the paradox destroys you. If you choose only to grieve the world, you abandon your life. You stop eating well, you stop sleeping, you stop engaging with loved ones, you stop doing your work, you consume news constantly, you're paralyzed by global suffering, and you become non-functional. And non-functional people can't help anyone. You're so consumed by global pain that you have nothing left to contribute. That's not compassion, that's self-destruction. But if you choose only to protect your life, you dissociate from the world's suffering. You avoid news, you distract yourself, you pretend everything's fine, you focus only on your small bubble, and you lose your humanity. You become numb, disconnected, unable to feel compassion because it hurts too much. And that's also destructive, because the world needs engaged humans, not numb ones. So you need a third option, not choosing one side, but holding both, grieving the world and living your life, being aware of suffering and enjoying your existence, contributing where you can and resting when you need to, This is the practice of paradox, and it's how you stay whole. Here's how you actually hold both grieving the world and living your life. Practice number 1. Create containers for grief and containers for living. Don't let either consume all of your time. You need both, time to grieve and time to live. So you create containers. Maybe every evening you spend 15 minutes acknowledging the world's suffering. You read news. You let yourself feel grief. You cry if you need to. You donate if you can. You take action where possible. And then you close that container. You say, I've held the world's pain for this time. Now I return to my life. And then you engage with life. You have dinner with loved ones. You watch something that makes you laugh. You do your work. You enjoy your hobbies. You sleep. You live. Not because the world's suffering doesn't matter, but because your life still needs to happen. Because you can't abandon yourself to grief. Because sustainable engagement requires rest and joy. Because you're human, and humans need both to survive. This isn't compartmentalization in an unhealthy way. It's creating structure so neither grief nor living consumes everything. You're not suppressing grief, you're giving it dedicated time. And you're not abandoning life, you're protecting time for it. And both matter, both are necessary. And holding both is wisdom. Practice number 2. Release the guilt and reframe living as necessary for contribution. The guilt says, I shouldn't enjoy anything when others are suffering. But that's not true. You enjoying your life doesn't take from their suffering. You being nourished, rested, and functional makes you more capable of helping. If you're depleted, you have nothing to give. If you're numb, you can't connect. If you're burned out, you can't act. So taking care of yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. You reframe. Living my life well is how I maintain the capacity to contribute. Eating nourishing food gives me energy. Sleeping well keeps me regulated. Connecting with loved ones sustains my humanity. Experiencing joy reminds me what I'm fighting for. I'm not abandoning the world by living. I'm maintaining myself so I can show up for the world in whatever small ways I can. And you release the guilt. Every time it arises, you say, my living does not dishonor their suffering. My joy does not diminish their pain. I'm allowed to be alive. I'm allowed to be human. And I'm more useful alive and functional than depleted and numb. This isn't bypassing. This is self-compassion. And it's necessary if you want to stay engaged long term. Practice number 3. Find small ways to honor the suffering while engaging with life. Integrate both instead of separating them. You don't have to choose between awareness of suffering and engagement with life. You can do both simultaneously. Maybe before your meal, you pause. You acknowledge, people are hungry and I have food. I'm grateful. And I dedicate this meal to their well-being. You're not pretending they don't exist. You're honoring them while nourishing yourself. Or when you're with loved ones, you notice, I'm grateful for this safety, for this connection, and I hold space for those who don't have it. You're not dissociating from their suffering. You're using your gratitude as a reminder of what you're fighting to protect, of why peace matters, of why your small acts of kindness and engagement matter. And you find small ways to contribute woven into your daily life. Maybe you donate a small amount regularly. Maybe you have one conversation a week about the issue. Maybe you support one organization. Maybe you use your platform to raise awareness. These aren't grand gestures, but they're integrated into your life. So you're not choosing between living and contributing, you're doing both simultaneously. Here's what I want you to understand. The paradox of grieving the world while living your life doesn't resolve. It's just the human condition during crisis. You will always be holding both, the world's suffering and your own life. And learning to hold both without guilt or numbness is spiritual maturity. It's how you stay engaged without being destroyed. It's how you contribute without burning out. It's how you maintain your humanity. We covered why the paradox feels impossible, survivor's guilt, and the question of whether your life matters during global crisis. We explored why choosing one side destroys you. Only grief makes you non-functional, only living makes you numb. And we walked through 3 practices. Create containers for grief and containers for living. Release guilt and reframe living as necessary for contribution. and integrate both by honoring suffering while engaging with life. This is hard, probably one of the hardest things you'll ever do, but it's necessary because the world needs you engaged, not destroyed, not numb, engaged. And engagement requires that you stay whole, that you grieve and live, that you hold both. And that's what makes you human, that's what makes you capable of love, and that's what the world needs most. So here's your practice for today. Spend 10 minutes acknowledging the world's suffering. Feel it. Let yourself grieve. And then spend 10 minutes doing something that makes you feel alive, something you enjoy. And notice you can do both. You can hold both, and both are necessary. Let me know in the comments, how do you hold this paradox? What helps you grieve and live simultaneously? Welcome to Holding Paradox. This is where wholeness lives.